Chapter 1160. The rest of them started to prepare. They hid somewhere or found the best vantage point so that they could have a clearer view of the situation in the school bus. That way, they would be able to react appropriately in the most urgent situation. However, the entire operation team did not expect that the person who moved the fastest was actually the boss. He held his rifle with one hand, looking like a leopard in the forest as he leaped into the hidden area by the side of the road. Wolf was still hiding, unable to shift his gaze. Sometimes, blocking a line of sight was more important than sniping. Prince wasn't good at long-range shooting, so he could only wait anxiously. But just as he was panicking, he saw a figure climbing up the tree suavely. There was a murderous aura at the corner of his eyes. When he sat on the tree branch, he used the surrounding environment to hide his body, blending into the tree. Prince's eyes widened. The big devil? Wolf also felt that there was an additional person behind him. It was just a feeling. He didn't turn back. But he knew it was his boss. Not many people had seen Qin Mo's long-range sniping skills. Most of the time, he was in charge of giving orders, which soldier should be in which position and how to complete the mission safely. These people would be brought back the way they were when they came out. He was called the captain because he had to be the first to charge deep into the enemy's territory. However, not all missions could be completed based on who was strong enough. Prince watched as the person raised his rifle and placed it on his shoulder. He was like the most silent existence, his breathing moving with the wind. "Boss, what is he trying to do?" Hunter opened his mouth. Magician tilted his head, his face covered in dirt. "Shoot. Boss hasn't held a rifle in a long time, right?" Yes, everyone knew that ever since that incident, Qin Mo hadn't held a rifle in a real mission. No matter how good his shooting was, it was in the military because he didn't want to. After around 3 seconds, Magician smiled. Magician smiled. "Does this mean that boss is really coming back?" The person who raised his rifle and drew out an 800-meter no-man's land with a piece of hay in his mouth. That was enough to scare off anyone who tried to trespass the land. But how did he manage to overcome his psychological issues? Hunter didn't ask this question. Back then, they went on that mission together. When he found his boss, his eyes were bloodshot. His gun was placed by his side, his whole body was wet and his wrists were hanging by his side. Back to the army. Regardless of whether it was the higher-ups or the doctors, they all said that boss had been hypnotized and was no longer suitable for any missions. His military rank would be revoked and he would be sent back to the city. He was the pride of the heavens. They all knew. But who knew? In order to guard this place, his body was full of injuries. During the earthquake, in order to pull a person up, his back was smashed by a heavy object. He had to endure it until he reached the army to get treatment. He was as tough as a mountain. But when the mountain was destroyed, it was like the clear moon in the night sky. Even his departure was silent. Now, he raised the gun in his hand, and the muzzle followed a single point. That point landed behind the disguised recruit number 10, not leaving him by even an inch. The surrounding people all fell into silence. That was probably the only protection he could provide. He picked up the gun and locked onto one point. There was no mistake. Chapter 1161. "Boss, they're here." One of the people in the school bus tilted to the side and looked out of the bus door. The person who was lying on the bus couldn't turn around and looked at the roof. "Go check if they're imposters." Impersonation? That person was obviously confused by the environment and couldn't wrap his head around it. Actually, everyone was feeling pressured at this moment. Both the people who were surrounded and the people who were stationed there. Police imposters. The injured person narrowed his eyes. "If they are, kill them and use a child as a warning." "All right." The person was about to walk out. "Wait a minute, check if there are any special forces soldiers around when we go out." "Boss, I've seen this before." "There aren't any special forces soldiers, there are many armed policemen. It seems like they don't want us to leave." It's better if there aren't any. Pay attention to your surroundings and retreat if you see any signs of trouble. Yes. Everyone was worried that a sniper would appear at this moment. But at such a distance, anyone who wasn't a sharpshooter wouldn't be able to do anything to them. When they had chosen their parking spot, they had already taken this into consideration. Most importantly, the doctor didn't look like a police officer in disguise. The criminal with the gun lowered his head, and his fierce eyes met the man in the white coat. "Where's the medicine?" His voice was harsh. The man in the white coat trembled and stuttered, "It's here." With that, Bojo lifted the toolbox in her hands. The criminal was holding onto a child in his left hand, just in case something unexpected happened. He used the barrel of the gun to move the items in the toolbox. Other than a syringe, there was gauze and some medicine. "Boss, he doesn't have a gun, he seems real." The other person was in charge of reporting the situation. "Check if he has earphones." The person's breathing was painful. When his voice came out, it was extremely faint. Of course, Bojo heard him, but she pretended as though she hadn't heard anything. She continued to stand there, her fingers trembling. The moment the criminal raised his gun, everyone held their breath. The moment he raised his gun, everyone held their breaths. The position where he raised his gun was aimed at Bojo's head. Prince gritted his teeth so hard that they hurt. The members of the operation team tightened their grip on their guns. Many of them assumed that their boss wouldn't be able to control himself and shoot since no one knew what the criminal was up to. But at this moment, the young man in the white coat took a heavy step back. Then, as if he was scared silly, he squatted on the ground and hugged his head with both hands. "Wait." Number 10's hand signal. Others might not be able to see it, but the snipers could see it. Although he was holding his head, it was indeed a gesture. But why couldn't they understand the gesture? Was this a military gesture? What was the meaning of this? His index finger bent forward a little. Anyone who does missions knows that when you're on a mission, you don't do anything meaningless. Therefore, the young man's actions were definitely meaningful, but they really couldn't understand what it was. A unique hand signal from the army? He couldn't tell how many missions Magician and Hunter had completed. But there was one person who knew. Unknowingly, this was Prince's thought as he stood under the tree. He had a feeling that the devil hiding on the tree branch would know what that gesture meant. He didn't know why, but he just had this feeling. In fact, Chin Mo did know. Chapter 1162. Which meant, she had asked him not to shoot first. Chin Mo knew everything, but he didn't loosen his grip. Even through the sniper rifle, his eyes were as deep as the galaxy in the night sky. The criminal was relieved. The more afraid the doctor was, the lower the possibility of it being fake. Moreover, the person had knelt down just now. It was obvious that he was scared silly. "Get up." The criminal reached out and pulled Bojo into the school bus. It was the most dangerous place in the bus. This meant that there would be 3 guns pointed at Bojo's head. That's right, 3 guns. But the moment she entered, Bojo understood who was the most difficult person to deal with in the bus. Even though he was injured, he still had a gun in his hand. Even at this moment, he was still sizing her up with the tattooed man. In the video, he was the one who had shot the tourists. Bojo lowered her lids. She suppressed all her emotions but didn't stop trembling. The tattooed man tilted his head. "Yes, the doctor is here. It isn't fake. I will continue watching. I know I won't be captured alive." For such overseas criminals, being captured alive was the most dangerous thing. Being captured alive meant that they would be able to obtain information. Bojo stood there motionlessly. Her black-rimmed glasses made her look extremely weak. The criminal behind her pushed her forward forcefully. "Quick. I'll give you 5 minutes. If you can't treat our boss, I'll shoot you. I need a medical kit." Bojo glanced to the left when she said this. This scene made him look like he was scared to death. But in reality, she was looking at her surroundings. She was looking at every location and the criminal's position as well as their overall abilities. 1v3. One of them was lying on the ground, but he needed the most attention. Bojo retracted her gaze. She knelt down with trembling hands and took something out of the medical kit. There was a gun pointed at her head. It was obvious that the criminal had relaxed a lot by now, but he was still very nervous. It was fine as long as he was nervous. Humans would always have flaws when they were nervous. Bojo lowered her lids. She took out the hemostatic forceps. Her lips were hidden in a place that others couldn't see. I've lost a lot of blood. This was nonsense. Which injured person did not lose a lot of blood? Everything was for the sake of a better disguise, so even the words he said were in line with his identity. The tattooed man moved and gave a look to the other side, indicating for the other side to prepare more things. The criminals also received the signal, but they didn't leave. The three of them were watching the doctor. They couldn't allow anything to go wrong. If Bojo did anything that didn't match her status, she would be shot in the head. At this time, all the children were really scared silly. Looking at this scene, their little hands grabbed the safety belts, for fear that there would be another scene of a gunshot. Bojo wore medical gloves and took out the last tool from the medical box, an injection needle. The tattooed man frowned. Check. Yes. Both of them were drug dealers. The criminal took the injection needle and didn't find any problems. More importantly, Bojo stuttered, this medicine has stabilizing properties. When treating serious injuries, there would always be anesthetics and stabilizers. This sentence caused the tattooed man's eyes to flicker. Chapter 1163. It was at that moment. Prince, who was standing under the tree, suddenly realized that there was a completely different aura coming from the tree. Like a ferocious tiger coming out of its cage, the man suddenly adjusted the muzzle of his gun, turning it 45 degrees. He was quick and ruthless. Just when Prince didn't know what was going on, a voice rang out. The person in the school bus suddenly raised the syringe in his hand. Just as everyone was looking at the young man with worry in their hearts, his movements were so fast that it was almost a blur to the eyes. The tattooed man, who was lying on the ground, was shocked. He didn't even have time to move. The hand that was holding the gun had its tendons severed. Everything happened too quickly. It was so fast that the two men next to him had just raised their guns. A loud bang was heard. No one knew where the gunshot had come from. But that was the sound. It was the thug who had pointed the gun at Bojo's head. The blood was like a blood mist, spreading in the air. The tattooed man screamed out loud. Another gangster standing next to him had already reached out to grab a child. Sniping, no angle. But at this moment, the young man moved his long legs, and using the momentum, he leaped forward and kicked the criminal's wrist. Then, the force from the rotation of her body turned the young man's white coat into a weapon in her hand. There was a swishing sound. The white coat fell and covered the criminal's head. The moment he felt the pain and darkness, a second gunshot rang out, breaking through the car window. First, the glass shattered, followed by a headshot. Who was it? Who was that sniper? The same question appeared in everyone's mind. The tattooed man looked at the doctor, who had stopped. He was in so much pain that he broke out in a cold sweat, but his eyes narrowed a little fiercely. Who are you? This was not a doctor at all. He actually didn't see it. Large beads of sweat rolled down his forehead. The tattooed man's heart sank as he looked at the harmless-looking youth. He had never seen this face before, so how could he be so strong? Bojo's face was still stained with blood. Because she had been too fast, she had cut her fingers. However, none of this could affect her temperament. It was a kind of evil that lived in the darkness all year round. After she squatted down, she looked at the tattooed man and smiled. You're asking me who I am? I'm your old enemy. You can call me Daddy. The tattooed man had no way to describe his feelings at this moment. Daddy? He wanted to hit someone, but he could only curl up in pain. Outside the car came the sound of people passing by. She reached out and hugged him, patting his back. She really didn't know how to comfort a child, so she used the same method the Almighty had used to comfort her when she was young. Don't be afraid, big sister will buy you some sweets later, everything is fine now. Your mother is outside, I'll open the car door now. You guys can alight one by one, don't squeeze, you will hurt yourselves. The boy, who had been scared out of his wits, moved a little after hearing that, as if he had come back to his senses. Sometimes, a hug is enough to comfort someone. The little kids knew that the danger was over. One of the bolder ones lifted his head, his fingers tugging the hem of her shirt. He asked shyly, "Isn't it supposed to be a PLA, uncle? Why big sister?" Chapter 1164. The people outside were anxious. The tattooed man lying in the car could no longer move. The parents were the first to break through the defense line. Some of them even pushed the guards who were originally standing at the side. But at a time like this, everyone could understand how they wanted to receive it. Compared to the chaos outside. When the children got off the bus, they followed the order of their seats. Bojo arranged for them to form a line. She stood in front of the tattooed man and crippled his other hand. This way, she would be more at ease. The children were also covered in blood. Their faces were still filled with fear from what had just happened. One of the children's legs turned to jelly when he took a single step. Bojo reached out to prevent her from falling. She said carefully, "Walk slowly, there's no rush." The little bean nodded. He was still afraid. However, all of them were very obedient. He sniffled and continued to walk forward. When he walked out of the school bus, his mother hugged him in her arms and he burst into tears. The situation was finally under control. The person in charge heaved a sigh of relief. However, there was another person who heaved a sigh of relief. It was the crown prince. When the devil sat on the tree, his aura was too strong and he only fired 2 shots. 2 shots, no more and no less. Every time the gun was pulled, it brushed past his ear. Prince was the one who saw everything clearly. When that person jumped down from the tree, there was only one thought in his mind. He was a sharpshooter. How could a headshot be made from such a tricky position? No, it was 2. It was mainly because he was fast. Not only was he fast, but it seemed like he had already analyzed the opponent's movements when he raised his gun. His mentality, speed, and combat experience were all factors. The Crown Prince's thoughts were a little chaotic, but this did not affect him from rushing out to enjoy the joy. He was really happy. As long as he saw the group of little beans jumping around with their friends, he would always feel relieved in his heart. Everyone in the operation team put away their guns, as if they had never appeared. Prince and Wolf were in the same area as Chin-mo. The demon's pocket was bulging as he walked towards the school bus with a spear in one hand. After the smoke subsided, there was a vast expanse of white on the battlefield. The man's back was straight, and he wore a combat uniform with a black band around his wrist. When he passed through the crowd, time seemed to stop. People are looking back. Chin-mo didn't seem to care. He pulled the youngster out of the car. Then, they gave each other a tight hug. Even that pair of eyes of the night had become so deep that it was completely dark. Bojo paused, sniffing the pleasant peppermint scent. It was different from usual, carrying the smell of gunpowder. She wanted to reach out too, but then she realized that there was blood on her hands and clothes. "Brother Mo, I'm dirty. I don't mind." Chin-mo tightened his grip, as though he wanted to knead her into his bones. "You don't mind?" He returned the hug. Bojo smiled and reached out. This kind of hug was not excessive at this time. After all, the scene just now could be described as a matter of life and death. It was just that the few people who were familiar with their boss were in a state of shock. They couldn't believe that the great demon would do something like that. Previously, when they were carrying out missions, the boss would also revive them when they survived a disaster. But hugs. Chapter 1165. If it hadn't been for his superb marksmanship, they would have suspected that he was a fake boss. The little kids stood at the side, their eyes wide as they watched the scene. His parents wiped their tears. "Hurry, thank the two uncles from the People's Liberation Army." The little kids remained silent. One of them tugged his mother's sleeves, leaning towards her ear. "One of them is an elder sister. You can't differentiate between genders, don't call anyone good-looking your elder sister." With a smile, he ended the topic. But the unforgettable topic was the hug in front of them. Of course, that was an internal matter of the operation team. The person in charge walked over, getting his men to detain the tattooed man. He couldn't walk anymore, but he was still breathing. This proved that the mission had been a success, they had captured him alive. The tattooed man was carried down. When he saw the people wearing black scarves, his first reaction was that they weren't ordinary policemen, they were definitely from the military. But he couldn't tell which military unit they were from since they were all wearing black scarves. Among the onlookers, there was a journalist who wanted to record this scene. But Chin Mo was the first to notice. He glanced at Magician on the left. Magician took a step forward, blocking the camera. "I'm sorry, I can't take photos, please hand over the film." "Why?" "Mister, your heroic deeds should be reported and let everyone know. This is such a great contribution. Without you, these children would not have been saved." The reporter adjusted the angle, trying to capture the image of Chin Mo and Bojo. Was that the disguised doctor who entered the school bus? Magician frowned. This time, he didn't hesitate, reaching for the camera. He opened it swiftly and took out the memory card, breaking it into two. "Hey! What's wrong with you? Don't think you're so great just because you're an armed policeman. Why did you touch my camera?" Magician ignored him, returning to Chin Mo's side. "Boss, it's settled." "Retreat," Chin Mo said. The person in charge basically understood the situation. The worker was still shouting, unreasonable. "I want more people to know how heroic they are. I admire them. Why are these people so arrogant? It's fine if they don't understand, but they even broke my things." In fact, as long as the worker wasn't so selfish, he should understand that not allowing him to film was good for himself. They forced their admiration onto others, but they didn't know that their own actions could very well expose such a mysterious operation team, which would be even more dangerous. A world-class mercenary organization was not weak. Not only would they be able to obtain information from your appearance, but they would also be able to target you based on your clothing, body shape, and combat habits. The person in charge gestured to the guard. The meaning of the gesture was very simple. It was to take that person away. The more he explained, the more information he would reveal. He might as well not say anything. Even he initially thought that the people sent to them this time were armed policemen. But when the person in charge saw one of them pretending to be a doctor and his every move, as well as the two perfect sniping sounds just now that were impossible for an ordinary person to achieve, the person in charge was shocked. He knew that they were not armed police. Special forces appeared in his mind, but he wasn't sure which unit they were from or what their numbers were. These people stood tall and silent. Even their guns were full of strength. When they were silent, one wouldn't even be able to sense their presence. Such special forces. The person in charge's expression changed, but he didn't say anything. The tattooed man wasn't willing to admit defeat. When his eyes swept past Chin Mo, it seemed as though they were filled with venom. "You are dead." He spoke in Burmese, as though he was spitting venomous words. Chin Mo didn't even look at him. Blood trickled down the tattooed man's lips. His wrist hung limply, his gaze landing on Bojo's face. "Especially you, doctor." At this moment, Chin Mo moved. He blocked the man, his thin lips moving slightly. You won't have the chance because you will die in China's prison. The tattooed man's eyes widened in disbelief when he heard that voice. That voice, that voice. That demonic presence. The tattooed man would never forget the time when someone had sniped the 10 of them like a ghost. Until the very end, they hadn't been able to locate him. If it hadn't been for reinforcements, he would have lost his life. The memory was too deep. Hence, he couldn't forget that voice. It was the person who had destroyed them when they were at their peak, when they had the most believers. How was that possible? Hadn't he been hypnotized? Why was he here? The tattooed man's expression changed. Even after he was sent into the police car, his heart still pounding. It was a fear that was imprinted in the depths of his heart. With the closing of the police car door, everything stopped. The little kids were still standing there, a little afraid but also a little eager to speak. Mommy, Mommy. MMH? The older brother is holding on to the older sister as though she's a little kid. Those are the 2 older brothers, don't mistake them for someone else. But indeed, they seem to be holding on to a little kid. Perhaps it was because one of them was too tall and had a black mask over his face. The other was handsome but young. Bojo glanced down at her hand, the wound that the Almighty had treated. Even though the wound wasn't important to her, the Almighty held on to her wrist. But with the Almighty holding her wrist, she could always feel the warmth under the thin skin. It felt like jade. It was obvious that he had other matters to attend to. It wasn't appropriate for him to hold on to her like that. Hence, the people beside their boss watched as he took something out from his pocket and placed it in the youngster's hand. Come over after you're done eating. Bojo glanced down at the thing in her palm, her lips lifting into a smile. Magician, who was closest to them, had been walking normally when he bumped into a tree. Hunter had fared better, at least he hadn't knocked into the tree. But when they saw the scene, their reactions were the same. It was a little surreal. Prince opened his mouth, wanting to say something. However, when he met the devil's gaze, he quickly looked up at the sky and whistled, acting as though he hadn't seen anything. His heart was filled with gossip. F***ck, what exactly was going on? Wolf remained silent. Silent, but the little kids weren't silent. They turned and asked, Mommy, did you bring sweets? You're still thinking about sweets at a time like this? The mother glanced at her son's blood-stained arm, hugging him. The little kid pouted. That big brother brought sweets for little brother. I saw it, it's orange-flavored. It's good to have a big brother, Mommy. Can you and Daddy give me another big brother? Bring me sweets when he grows up. Hearing that, the mother was stunned. She looked behind her and saw the young man who had been pretending to be a doctor. He had a lollipop in his mouth and one hand was in his pocket. His expression was a little lazy, and the hem of his shirt was being pulled by another child. Big sister, no, Mommy said your little brother. Didn't you say you were going to give me sweets? Come with me. The youngster raised a finger, shaking it. I can't give you this. Why? The little kid was starting to get agitated. The youngster wasn't moved. My captain gave it to me, the meaning is different depending on the person who gave it to me, understand? The little kid obviously didn't understand. Wasn't it just a candy? On the other hand, Prince was conflicted. So the devil's pocket was bulging because of the sweets? The devil, sweets, who would link these two things together? Moreover, the devil coaxed his soldiers by giving them sweets. Wasn't that a little too feminine? Prince imagined that if the devil gave him a piece of sweets, it would be scarier than the end of the world. Prince shuddered and stretched out his hand to rub his arm. The truth proved that Prince was thinking too much. Magician and Hunter stood at the side, their thoughts turning 180 degrees. There's a problem. Of course. Hugging was fine, but giving sweets? When did their boss go down this path? Why do I feel like I'm being tortured? What do you mean? I've never felt as single as I do today. These words were said in a whisper. That was because their boss had completed the final communication with the person in charge here. It was simple, A-level confidentiality. Don't spread it, don't mention it, don't upload any images and don't do any case analysis for the time being. Qin Mo's voice was light, and when it came through the black scarf, it carried a kind of nobility. The person in charge wasn't muddle-headed, he understood. This. He paused before continuing, "Comrade, don't worry, we will take care of the aftermath." Usually, when they couldn't control themselves and had to give a detailed explanation of the case, they would look for the local armed police and let them say that they were the ones who completed the mission. In China, some people couldn't even leave their names behind after doing something. That was because they had to deal with more ruthless terrorist organizations. Magician and Hunter listened to their boss's communication, feeling that he had entered the wrong profession for such a strong aura. Especially when their boss was wearing a black mask and his gaze swept over them, he seemed like the boss of Chinatown. His aura was like a mountain torrent. "Honestly, boss, you shouldn't have joined the army, you should have become a gangster, the mission was over." Their communication was completed. Qin Mo reached out, switching his phone out of flight mode. In an instant, he received a message. "Boss, this is the information you asked us to intercept. It's regarding number 10, every recruit would have their information intercepted. This was a form of defense for the special forces. Once you were here, you had to be completely transparent." Chapter 1166. Regardless of whether it was the messages she sent or her usual previews, they all appeared on Qin Mo's phone. Every single message was related to the Asian Cup. There was even a request from a certain someone. "Please obtain the qualification for the Asian Cup." That youngster probably didn't ask anyone for such a favor. Hence, even her tone seemed a little stiff. The last message was sent to Phone E. Qin Mo knew that it was for him. "The Almighty will go back." Qin Mo's gaze swept past the 5 words and landed on obediently Darling, who was standing not far away with a lollipop in her mouth. Her hand was wrapped in white gauze, and her head was lowered as she spoke to a little bean. Qin Mo didn't know what they were talking about, and under her black hair was a glowing side profile. It wasn't appropriate. The location and time weren't appropriate. The clothes he was wearing weren't appropriate either. Qin Mo tightened his grip, as though he was suppressing something. Then, he walked over. Bojio seemed to have sensed his approach, glancing up. The little bean wanted to say, "Big brother, your little brother is so petty." Unexpectedly, he was the one to take the initiative. "Captain, this little bean wants to snatch my lollipop." Little bean. Little brother isn't just petty, he's also shameless. Didn't he say he would give in to the little kid? Fortunately, someone was teaching him a lesson. The little bean glanced at the tall big brother. He reached over and grabbed the back of his collar as though he was a sack. His voice was calm. "Let's go." He had to go home and teach the little brother a lesson. Whenever he was disobedient, his father would often do the same. But the little brother wasn't bad. He was just a little shameless, but he had saved them just now. "Mommy, will that big brother bully the little brother?" Magician and Hunter were walking at the back. They could vaguely hear the child's voice in the air. They thought to themselves, "Kid, don't you know our boss is different from normal people? How could he be lecturing you? He's more like spoiling you." If he really wanted to teach him a lesson, he would only ask one question. "Do you think you are suitable to be a foreign special forces soldier? If you think you are, come and fight with me." Just this question alone made many recruits retreat in the face of difficulties. But now, it was different. Indeed, it was different. Even though Qin Mo had a sense of propriety and restraint, he couldn't resist the strong gossiping heart of the operation team. "Huntsman, it's number 10. You're the one who picked him up. Don't you have any information on him?" Magician tried to find out more. The hunter was furious. "If there was, why couldn't I find out about it? Strange, who is it?" Magician turned his head and looked at the back view of the person in the white coat. He thought about what this recruit had been doing all this while and suddenly froze. F***CK, it can't be, it's that guy? Hunter frowned. Who is it? In Jiang City, when we went to look for Boss, he recognized a younger brother. Magician felt it was hard to explain. The hunter was shocked. Younger brother? Boss? He didn't seem like the kind of person who would recognize a younger brother. Because of that person, we suspected that Boss was gay. Magician tilted his head. Now, it seems like he really is gay. Why didn't I think of it just now? The last time we were on a mission, this person pretended to be a member of the film crew and walked right in front of me. I didn't even notice anything strange about him. In the end, Boss caught him. Hunter couldn't hear the rest of the conversation. All his thoughts were occupied by one word. Chapter 1167. Magician didn't deny it. Instead, he asked, "Can you explain why our boss gave her candy just now?" He really couldn't explain it. The recruits didn't know and thought that the devil would occasionally be as gentle as a gentle breeze. But they knew that he wouldn't be like that to others. Hunter took a step forward. Magician asked, "What's wrong?" "I suffered a huge blow, I need a break." "This is too much of a shock, I wasn't prepared at all." Hunter felt like he was done for. Honestly, the fact that their captain liked the blue child was ridiculous. Magician patted his shoulder. "I can understand your feelings, we felt the same way back then." "So, that fellow chased after the troops?" Hunter's imagination wasn't bad. Magician glanced up. "You were a witness yesterday." He had witnessed his boss being pressed down. His boss was pressed down. The more Hunter thought about it, the more his world seemed to be collapsing. At this moment, a group of people had reached an uninhabited area. They split up from the rest and headed to the place where the military aircraft could land. Chin Mo glanced over, catching sight of the youngster with a lollipop in her mouth. Her face was black and stained with blood. Little Bojo. MMH? Bojo was surprised that the Almighty would call her name in such a situation. Chin Mo asked leisurely, "Are you done with the candy?" "MMH, there's only a stick left." She sucked on it. But even she hadn't expected the Almighty to ask, "Do you want a kiss?" Bojo's collar was still being tugged at. She felt the Almighty's hand lift the white coat up, and her eyes met the handsome face that was very close to her. The black mask had long been pulled up to his chin, and the dark color made his face look flawless and noble. A few strands of his black hair fell down, blocking his beautiful eyes and brows. Half of his body seemed to be wrapped around her, blocking not only the wind in the forest but also the hunter's line of sight. The sudden intimacy. As his thin lips landed, the scent of tobacco lingered around her. Bojo felt her breath being sucked away. Her heart seemed to be scratched by a furry claw, a layer of sweetness gushing out. It was a light kiss, like a candy hidden in the Almighty's pocket. Both of their lips had the taste of oranges. Traces of numbness came from between their lips and slid over their skin. For a moment, the only thing left in her nose was the unique taste of a man. It was the smell of gunpowder with a hint of mint and tobacco, making it hard for her to let go. Magician and Hunter, who were standing not far away from them, froze. "Boss, are you bullying us because we haven't been in a relationship before? Is that why you're acting so nonchalant? Even if you pull up your clothes like that, we still know how to kiss, okay?" Could it be? Magician and Hunter looked at each other. Based on their understanding of their boss, this meant that he didn't care whether they knew or not. On the other side, Bojo's breathing was erratic. The corners of her mouth curled up faintly. Her head was still half covered by the white coat, and her little face was flushed. Unfortunately, the color of her face could not be seen at all. Chapter 1168. There was a hint of a smile in the Almighty's voice when he said that. It was a classic honey trap. Bojo couldn't guard against it and didn't want to either. Hence, she stood there and allowed the Almighty to wipe his face. As for the destructive gazes from the side, Bojo wasn't bothered. Anyway, it was a good chance for others to know that the Almighty was hers. When Hunter and Magician returned to the military unit, they felt as though they were floating. In the past, they had been gossiping about their relationship as a joke. Now that they were in a relationship, how could they gossip? It was against the rules in the military unit. Boss. Why exactly did he do that? Not to mention the ambiguous kiss just now, the candy incident had spread throughout the entire army in less than a morning. Everyone was trying to guess their relationship and naturally, the old general heard about it. What did you say? That youngster gave candy? Was he lying to me? Or was he joking? The old general took a sip of tea. The adjutant stepped forward. Reporting, it's completely true, sir. The old general wanted to say something else. The person in question was already standing at the door. He was dressed in his military uniform, standing against the light. His aura made the adjutant, who had been in this position for many years, feel a little fearful. No, he couldn't be fearful. After all, he was still his junior. The old general's reaction would be swift. His gossipy face had turned into a bright smile, like a wise man with many layers of knowledge. You're here? The mission was a success. Chin Mo walked in and gave a standard salute, his tone lazy. I'm sure you've heard. The old general took a sip of tea. Heard? What did you hear? It has nothing to do with me. Chin Mo didn't beat around the bush, going straight to the point. The old general pretended to be confused, turning towards his adjutant. This youngster is speaking in riddles again, what does he want? Reporting, I'm not sure. The adjutant was an honest man, his face turning red the moment he lied. Since the chief is so concerned about recruit number 10, you should be aware of his recent movements. For example, the rumors about him suppressing me should have reached you a long time ago. Adjutant Lee is a messenger, so it's not hard for him to find out such information. Since the chief insists that he hasn't heard of it, as the person involved, I can explain it to him. I have a special relationship with recruit number 10, so it's not suitable for us to go on a mission together. She won't be part of the operation team for this overseas mission. Li Mo nodded. The old general's expression turned serious for the first time. He reached out and pinched his glabella. Chin Mo, you aren't an emotional person. Chin Mo's expression turned serious. Chin Mo, you aren't an emotional person. When someone points a gun at her head, I can't stay calm. If I don't stay calm, I won't be able to complete the mission. The old general looked at him and said, but today, you did very well. It's different outside the country. Even at this moment, Chin Mo's thoughts were clear. We won't have any reinforcements there, we won't be able to disguise ourselves and we won't even have a path of retreat. The old general had his own insistence. Number 10 is a rare technical soldier. I admit it. When Chin Mo said these 3 words, he could even imagine a certain someone sitting in front of the computer, her fingers flying across the keyboard. Even the coldness in his eyes melted. He smiled faintly. There aren't many people who are better than him in terms of network technology. The adjutant standing at the side. What's with the feeling of being sold? But. With that, Chin Mo paused and glanced at the old general, his tone calm. If it was your daughter, would you let her go to the battlefield? The old general had a daughter, and he had wanted her to get to know this cold boy. He was a soldier, and indeed, he had never thought of letting his daughter go to the front line. What kind of place was that? It was a place where people could eat people. Chin Mo smiled, and there was an indescribable emotion in his words. You wouldn't. The old general choked, and for a moment, he couldn't say a word. In the end, he said weakly, "Cold boy, you are being unreasonable. That isn't your daughter. That isn't my daughter." Chin Mo stood up, stuffing one hand into his pocket. He looked lazy, but in fact, there was a glint in the corner of his eyes. He spoke in a casual tone, but the words that came out of his mouth shocked the other 2. That's my life. Just 5 short words. The old general couldn't say another word. Chin Mo stood with his back to the light, and his voice came again. For the mission the day after tomorrow, think of a way to make her stay. This kind of conversation would not be heard by a fourth person other than the three of them. After Chin Mo left, the air in the room seemed to have quietened down. After an unknown period of time, the sound of the clock shaking could be heard. The old general knocked on the stainless steel in his hand. Was that fellow asking me for a favor? I think so. Even though it was unbelievable, the adjutant was still suppressed by the words, "That is my life, until now." Who could ask the devil to ask someone for a favor? It was hard to imagine that such words would come out of the devil's mouth. However, it was precisely because of this. He and the old general would understand the significance of number 10 to him. Send the name list. The old general put down his cup, his gaze a little heavy. The day after tomorrow seemed to have been decided. Even he was just cooperating with the work on this mission. No one could predict how dangerous it would be. Most of the people who came had a rough idea. The stricter the selection, the more unpredictable it was. In fact, after today's incident, there were already 2 people with psychological problems. They were indeed the best of the best in the military, and they were also very brave. However, the quality of their sleep would directly reflect the situation. The doctor had already marked a cross on the psychological aspect. This mission didn't only require physical conditions, but also psychological endurance. After all, the other party had a psychological hypnotist. That would be the real nightmare. The military didn't slack off in their training. Even if they completed a rescue mission, they still had to do what they had to do. The further they went, the more intense the selection became. Basically, everyone was covered in mud. Perhaps it was because of the rumors or the exhaustion from the training, but one of the new recruits suddenly stood up during the break. He looked towards Bojo. Do you dare to compete? During the mission, the new recruit was at the periphery and wasn't sure what was going on. Chapter 1169. Bojo wiped the sweat off her chin when she was called. She glanced up, her gaze deep. Prince was in the same dormitory as Bojo and they were in the same team. Moreover, they had been together for such a long time. He knew Bojo's performance better than anyone else. Now, someone said that she had relied on her connections to get her position. That was so frustrating. Prince wanted to stand up for her. After all, he came from the military and had a fiery temper. He hadn't expected someone to interrupt him. What do you want to compete in? It was Bojo. She stood up with one hand stuffed into her pocket and the other hand behind her back, wiping the last drop of sweat off her chin. Her tone was calm. No one in the military would be too harsh. Someone had suggested this challenge because he was responsible for the mission. He knew how hard it was to become a technical soldier, but he had to be someone worthy of their protection. You pick. That was the recruit's reply. Bojo glanced up. I'm fine with anything. Then let's not compete in a single match. After today's training, we'll meet in the jungle. According to the international jungle rules, regardless of the method, the one who explodes first wins. It was rare for a recruit to have such a challenge. That recruit also knew that according to the previous rumors, it was their technical soldiers who had destroyed the opposing team. But the others didn't know that there was a sniper among them. If there hadn't been an outstanding sniper, number 10 wouldn't have been able to infiltrate the enemy camp. They were the last to be sacrificed. From the start to the end, they hadn't seen number 10. The reason why they chose the jungle challenge was to tell the recruit that if the technical soldier was too weak during an overseas mission, he would be a burden to the entire operation team. Bojo understood what he meant. She drank a mouthful of water and replied, okay. Prince opened his mouth. He wanted to tell Bojo that this was the recruit with the highest qualities in Team 2. His sniping and concealment skills were top-notch. She should consider before agreeing. But on second thought, if he was in her shoes, he would have accepted the challenge too. But, brother, tell me the truth. What exactly is your relationship with the devil? Was it really as the rumors said? The military didn't allow such special feelings. Two men. Even if they weren't in the military, it wasn't possible. If this was true, even the great devil would have to be demoted in rank. Even though she hadn't been in the military, she knew the logic behind it. She smiled. What do you think our relationship is? This question made Prince choke. What should he say? F***ck. Just as Prince's face turned green, Bojo opened her mouth again, her tone leisurely. Family. Family members? Prince's eyes widened. What do you mean? Holy sh**t, he was even stuttering. It was mainly because this word was too misleading. Bojo arched a brow and pointed at herself. I'm handsome, right? Captain is handsome too. It's easy to tell. Prince. Are you praising yourself or answering my question? Don't tell me you're brothers. Prince chuckled. Bojo turned, nonchalant. Congratulations, you got it right. But we aren't blood related, we're cousins. Cousins? Prince felt that something was amiss. Then why did you suppress the devil that day? Bojo arched a brow. I just wanted to ask my brother to not tell anyone about our relationship so that the people here wouldn't have any ill feelings towards me. We are all new soldiers and I don't know how to fold my blanket. It's embarrassing. Don't you want people to know that your uncle is our old general? Bojo raised her eyebrows. Prince found the first half reasonable, but when he heard the last sentence, his expression darkened. He pointed at Bojo. You. F***ck, how did she know? That didn't make sense. Bojo took another sip of water, a devilish smile on her face. So, you believe me now? Tell me how you know my identity first. Prince thought to himself. Wasn't his disguise good enough? He hadn't even interacted with his uncle before. Bojo replied slowly, I'll find out if I want to. Youngster, you're still too naive. It's something that can be settled with a computer, how can it be so troublesome? Prince was stunned. He held on to Lin Fan's hand. Brother, please don't tell anyone about this. I really want to join the army. Sure. Bojo placed the water down. Tell me your conditions. Prince glared. Another F***king condition? Why did he join the military instead of being a robber? Tell me, what are your conditions? Prince was behaving like a little wife. Bojo pointed at her phone. I was warned by my captain that if I use my phone again, he'll kick me out of the military. Think of a way to get me a phone. We can't contact anyone in the military. Prince had his principles. Oh, Bojo replied. Then I'll go talk to my roommates about your family background. F***ck. Prince reached out and pulled her back. Promise me that you won't include any pictures in your messages and the topic can't be related to the military. Also, you can't describe the situation here. Bojo looked at him. Do you think I'm committing treason? Of course I wouldn't do such a thing. I'm just sending a message to my teammates. Teammates? Prince was dumbfounded. Do you miss your army unit? Bojo glanced up at the sky. She felt that she had to hide her identity since there was a video online of her admitting to being a girl. Even though the military wouldn't be able to see it since it was a sealed-off place, it was better to keep a low profile. I miss it. Bojo's words were true. Sometimes, whenever she saw the computer and touched the keyboard, she would be reminded of that period of time. She would sit in the club with those people and beat them up. Sometimes, she would flash into the blood pool to kill them. After killing them, they would leave with a chicken wing in their mouths and oil on their hands. At that time, Yao Yao would be sitting beside her, watching Coco and Feng Shang fight for the MVP. Bojo's gaze softened when she thought about it. Those eyes used to be dark and cold, but now they seemed to be reflecting something in them. Prince looked at the youngster and was reminded of his time in the military. At that time, He had been a cold and aloof military prince who was invincible in close combat. Why did he seem to have changed after coming to this military unit? This military unit was poisonous. All right, I'll get one. Don't tell anyone about this. Prince left with his conditions. He was still thinking about how formidable his cousin was. The devil was already inhuman, and now, there was another cunning one. He wouldn't be afraid of any tricks when he carried out missions in the future. In terms of tricks, they weren't weak either. After Prince got his phone, they found a place that wouldn't be easily discovered. It was a strange place. In the forest near the training ground. Hurry up. That was Prince's original words. Bo Jiao glanced at him. Don't use such misleading words. If someone passes by, they might think that I did something to you. Prince moved 3 meters away from the youngster. How could he forget about her reputation? Indeed, he had to maintain a distance. It wouldn't be good if others thought that he was gay. His uncle would definitely break his legs. Bo Jiao tried to switch on the phone. It wasn't her own phone and she wasn't used to it. But it was still possible to investigate something or make a phone call to someone. F***CK, why did you download Lil P's live stream? What exactly are you doing? Bo Jiao avoided his hand. Why are you so nervous? I'm just entertaining myself. Hurry up and take a walk. After the call, I still have to fight in the forest. I have to stand at a place where I can hear you. Prince was adamant about this. He wouldn't allow anything to go wrong with the phone he brought over. Bo Jiao opened the live stream and entered a room. There were already many people inside. Fortunately, it hadn't started yet. Which meant that she was on time. She wanted a phone because Yao Yao's competition was today, a solo live stream. That's right, a solo live stream. A solo match that would determine whether Supreme Alliance could qualify for the Asian Cup. Before this, Shui Yao Yao didn't even think that she would be in a competition like this. Shui Yao Yao was a newbie. Her opponent was one too. Even though they had the same starting point, their platform was different. YS was a famous team in Asia. Even their newbie was the center of attention. The number of fans on their official Weibo had already exceeded 6 digits. In comparison, the number of viewers on Shui Yao Yao's side was almost negligible. Such a solo match wouldn't go unnoticed. China and Country H each sent a commentator to explain the match online. But even so, all the procedures followed the international rules. This meant that it wasn't an ordinary solo match. Even though they were separated by the internet, they could still feel the tension in the room. Nervous? The netizen laughed. Our CK was still live streaming yesterday. He didn't seem nervous at all. The opponent should be nervous, ha ha ha. I heard it's a girl. A girl's ability is limited when it comes to gaming. Don't cry when you get killed. You don't understand. China likes to do such things. Even esports relies on one's face. Who knows how she got there? Get CK to be gentler when he attacks. That's how we show our might. He doesn't have to be gentle to win. You guys don't know how the Chinese chased after CK. It seems like the fans know who to support. Isn't it always the style of the Chinese? Ha ha ha, I'm going there to earn some money. There would always be comments during the live stream. Perhaps some people would find it strange. However, there were indeed some girls spamming the names of their idols crazily. They had completely forgotten that this was a battle between China and Country H. While they were cheering for CK, they didn't forget to say, even if they compete, they will only embarrass China. They won't be able to beat CK. I really don't understand why she's so strong. Her skills are terrible. Does she want to be famous? I don't know. Anyway, I'm here to see my CK. I feel that he has become cuter. It was in such a situation that it was possible. Shui Yao Yao sat in front of the computer, checking the mouse and keyboard one last time. Someone else said, Supreme Alliance is past its prime. That Spade Z dragged a bunch of people down and now he's leaving. If you ask me, Supreme Alliance deserves it. They didn't give us an explanation and just fired him. Since he's still in the team, let's see if we can still support him. Supreme Alliance has reached its limit. Otherwise, why would they let Shui Yaoyao compete? There's nothing special about her at all. Anyone who watched the live stream could basically see these comments. The club was filled with huge screens. It was more realistic. Lin Feng clenched his fists, coughing continuously. He wanted to rush over, but he knew that it was better to be quiet. What are you going to do? Yunhu tilted his head, probably worried that he wouldn't be able to control his temper. There were so many people waiting outside the club, waiting for news from Supreme Alliance. Regardless of what it would be a scandal. Lin Feng turned, his gaze deep. I'm going to smoke. That's right, he could only smoke at this moment. I'm worried that Yao Yao will collapse. He had been scolded before. In esports, if you played well, people would praise you. Wow, what an amazing almighty. If you didn't play well, people would say how old you were and that you should retire as soon as possible. How embarrassing. In reality, they wanted to win more than anyone else. Lin Feng couldn't forget that year when their captain wasn't around. Because he couldn't adjust his mentality, after one mistake, he had made a series of mistakes. In the end, he couldn't even see the comments on the screen. Because he had lost. As long as you lost, there was no meaning in a competition. Lin Feng stood in the corridor, his hands trembling when he lit his cigarette. Yunhu walked over, lowered his head, and touched the cigarette he had lit. Then he leaned against the wall like him. Sometimes, you underestimate a girl's tenacity. They are braver than us in certain aspects. It was rare for Yunhu to say so many words. Lin Feng smoked, not saying a word. Both of them knew that whoever sat in that room would have to bear this pressure. Professionally, sports players only looked glamorous on the surface. There was 1 minute left before the game would start. The players had a chance to speak to the team. Many people thought that Yunhu, Yin Wuyao, or Feng Yi would be the one guiding Yao Yao's tactics. But at this moment, Feng Yi stood up, gesturing to the other side to pause the call. Then he connected the call. When he was doing this, he was still dressed in a suit, looking like an ace manager. Just as everyone was still confused about what was happening, a voice suddenly came from beside her ear. Suddenly, she heard a voice. It was the voice of a teenager, with a hint of laziness but as clear as water. It calmed Shui Yaoyao's racing heart. Yao Yao. Before the glory, we have to accept the embarrassment and difficulties in front of us. Only then will some people know that Supreme Alliance doesn't just have Qin Mo, Rao Rong, Yunhu, Yin Wuyao, and Yu, Yao Yao. The final landing spot made Shui Yaoyao's heart skip a beat. Lin Feng and Yunhu couldn't help but laugh when they heard the commotion. At this moment, Bo Jiu asked, "Are you ready?" Shui Yaoyao's eyes were red, but she smiled and agreed. Then let's go. It was just like what the Almighty would say at the start of every match. Now that Bo Jiu had said it, it was calm but it wasn't easy. It was enough to make one forget everything else and focus on the outcome. He had to win the match. Yes, he had to win. The call ended. In an instant, only the sound of Shui Yaoyao logging into the game could be heard. On the other side, CK seemed to be sloppy, interacting with his fans nonchalantly. But he was a professional after all. Before this, he had seen the information of Supreme Alliance's contestant. Frankly speaking, she was just slightly better than ordinary players. Her hand speed was fast, but esports wasn't all about hand speed, it was more about awareness and control. Moreover, she had played as a sorcerer and was more of an auxiliary player. Her understanding of the character wasn't as good as his. CK entered the game, he had already thought of a strategy. He would press the line and crush the opponent, it wasn't a problem at all. It seems like both parties have chosen their characters. The shoutcaster started to synchronize. When he saw the screen, he revealed a shocked expression. Supreme Alliance's contestant has chosen an auxiliary character. It seems like the competition system has weakened her considerably. She doesn't even understand the character? The other shoutcaster shook his head. It's too dangerous. There was a huge disparity in their skills, and now she had chosen a weakened character. Could she still fight? CK lifted the corners of his lips when he saw Shui Yaoyao's character, his eyes filled with mockery. A third-rate player was indeed a third-rate player. 5 minutes. When he typed these words, the others didn't understand what he meant. CK's fans were already spamming the screen crazily. He's so handsome, my idol. Can it end in 5 minutes? Cool. CK won't even need 5 minutes to beat her. It's a one-sided abuse. This competition isn't interesting. This wasn't an official competition, it was just a solo. CK didn't have to worry about the situation. Their captain had reminded him. But everyone knew that in the Asian season, their results were obvious to all. It wasn't a big deal to be impudent at this moment. CK thought about it, moving his mouse to clear the players. Both of them chose the middle lane. That's how solo matches are. Let's see who gets the first kill. Solo matches were basically decided by the first kill. Both of them were playing as auxiliary characters, their tempo wasn't that fast. But CK said that it would end in 5 minutes. It might really end in 5 minutes. The shoutcaster looked at the situation on the screen. They are being suppressed. CK's positioning and dodging are outstanding, the outcome is obvious. But watching two auxiliary players in a solo match wasn't as satisfying as watching an assassin. It was obvious that CK was much faster than Shui Yaoyao. Not only that, Shui Yaoyao had been hit and her HP had dropped. Her positioning is too slow. I really don't understand how she managed to become a professional player. I say, you guys already know the outcome, why are you so bothered? Shui Yaoyao moved her mouse, as though she hadn't noticed her mistake, turning her body to attack the minions. Just like that, the match was so peaceful that it made people feel bored. The shoutcaster could only give a simple explanation. Let's take a look at the matchup between the two sides. If nothing out of the ordinary happens, both of them have chosen to face each other in the middle lane. But it's obvious that compared to CK's mechanics, our beautiful Yao Yao's movements seem a little fatigued. In such a situation, she can only clear the minions at the bottom of the tower. Honestly speaking, this doesn't look like a solo match at all. Luckily, their finances aren't that different. Their finances aren't that different, right? It looks like CK is suppressing her. That's why I find it weird. I can only say that this girl is tenacious. God, CK should have jumped the tower and killed her. I think so too, probably because the equipment isn't out yet. Let's wait a little longer. But there was a problem. Some viewers who were watching the live stream realized this. That was time. Why does it feel like a long time has passed? It's been 4 minutes, right? God, CK isn't that slow usually. It is. 5 minutes later. People started to reevaluate the match. They couldn't bring up the pace. What was going on? Even CK furrowed his brows, holding onto the mouse with one hand. He wasn't in a good mood since he hadn't expected it to be so slow. Yao Yao's support character is specially chosen to counter CK's expertise. Rao Rong looked at the match on the screen and suddenly laughed. He was as calm as the wind, his voice faint. Our sister Yao Yao's tactics are interesting. Lin Feng arched a brow. You like it? Even if you do, it won't be yours. Shut up, almighty Lin Feng. Take a look at your recovery. You need to use your brain when playing games. Rao Rong's voice and his words were completely different. Lin Feng's eyes widened. This person had only joined their team for a few days and he was already in this state. Moreover, it felt good to be called Almighty Lin Feng by the Almighty. The naive girl automatically ignored his mocking tone. And not just use your brain, Feng Shang spoke up, his face flushed adorably as he stuttered. Feng Shang spoke up, his face blushing adorably as he stuttered, Yao Yao, in order to practice her support, she spent a lot of time. She had watched so many videos and analyzed so many skills. She had even created a table specifically for each character's skills. And that person. CK, which support was his expertise. He woke up earlier than everyone else and slept later than everyone else. Even Feng Shang couldn't count how many times he had seen Yao Yao sleeping on the chair in the internet cafe after the National League. She would always have to wait for Uncle Ian to wake her up before she would pat her face and head to the washroom to wash her face before returning to her seat to continue her research. Countless battles and manipulations of skills. The club also had to train, but with the intensity of the training, even he wouldn't be able to endure it. Yao Yao really wanted to win. Regarding the solo match, Feng Shang lifted his head, looking at the character on the screen. CK was obviously getting impatient. He waved his mouse, intending to launch his strongest attack. Even as a support, there was damage output. Moreover, his support was a tank. He had a natural advantage and could push forward with his minions. It was obvious that Yao Yao was at a disadvantage, especially with her low HP. It wasn't safe for her to stand at the bottom of the tower. The sound of CK clicking his mouse sped up. The two commentators who were watching the match from God's perspective pressed down on their headphones, straightening their backs. It's coming. Chapter 1171. What is CK trying to do? People looked at the movements in the video and leaned closer to the computer screen. The expressions on their faces showed how excited they were. F*CK, it can't be. Tower kill? Even Feng Shang couldn't sit still, standing up abruptly. CK's character had already entered the tower. Using the advantage of the minions, he dealt damage to Shui Yao Yao and slowed her down with a skill. He won. This was the prediction of the netizens. Almost all of CK's fans were there. But in the next second, flash. The shoutcaster's voice came from the earpiece. Shui Yao Yao's movement is very clever. But it didn't seem to be of any use. CK had already walked to the middle of the two towers, meaning that he was going to kill her. CK didn't want to drag it any longer. 5 minutes had passed and he couldn't even defeat a girl. It would be a humiliation to him if word got out. Moreover, this girl was just an online gamer. How could an ordinary gamer compare to him? Yao Yao, run. The instant the bullet screen popped up, Shui Yao Yao turned around. Shui Yao Yao turned around and used her ultimate move. That's right, big move. Marked damage and had a speed reduction function. This was the highlight of Shui Yao Yao's support skill. At the start of the match, the shoutcaster was right. This character had been weakened in this season. But it wasn't that she couldn't fight. CK was a support, so he wasn't afraid of slow damage. It was just that the speed reduction was troublesome. He frowned, leaning to the left, waiting for the skill to recover. But at this time, the support that he had been chasing for some reason just now accelerated and rushed towards him. Courting death? CK tapped with his finger, wanting to continue his attack. But at this moment, he realized that he was out of mana and only had one skill left. F*CK. CK hurriedly retreated. But he had used up his flash when he was chasing after the person. At that time, he had thought that he could kill her. But he had only forced her to use her flash. CK's right hand slid the mouse. His position was too unfavorable, in the middle of the two towers. If he leaned a little, he would be attacked by the tower. Even as a support, CK didn't have enough HP. But if he didn't, he would fall into the opponent's big move. In less than 3 seconds, CK chose to avoid the delayed critical strike of the electric circle skill. He was unavoidably hit by the tower twice, leaving him with only a little HP. CK turned around and entered the bushes at the side. He planned to leave through the river. This way, he would definitely disappear from the enemy's attack range. At this point, everyone was well aware of the opponent's mana consumption. He was out of mana and couldn't recover his skills. Even if his opponent had mana, she wouldn't be much better off. At most, she would be a little stronger than him. With that support, what else could she do without her ultimate skills? CK floated through the grass, Shui Yaoyao chasing after him. This girl is really stupid. Doesn't she know that she can't chase after the support tank? Maybe it's because I want to kill too much. I'm like that sometimes too, and this is a rare opportunity. I don't have enough critical hits, and I don't have any ultimate moves. I can't kill it. The shoutcasters thought so too. Moreover, when Shui Yaoyao was chasing, she didn't even hit the target because she lost her vision. It was even more impossible. If she continued to chase, she might get into trouble. Chapter 1172. Feng Shang clenched his fists anxiously. Lin Feng lifted the corners of his lips, turning towards Yunhu. Do you think Sister Yao is going to? Before Lin Feng could finish his sentence, Shui Yaoyao sped up, moving behind the wall. She didn't throw the skill towards the bushes, instead, she flattened the tyrant. CK, who had intended to counterattack, was about to make his move when Shui Yaoyao flattened him. The tyrant leaped up, pulling all the aggro onto CK through the wall. With a swipe of its claws, CK was sent flying. Yaoyao was indeed out of mana, but she didn't need any more skills. She just needed a click of the mouse. A crisp sound rang out. KO. First kill. The competition was won. Almost everyone looked at this scene in disbelief. The shoutcaster was speechless. Not to mention CK himself, he was completely dumbfounded. Tyrant, she actually used the tyrant. That move is awesome. Big Spade must have used that move before. It's a familiar scene, let's feel sorry for CK, Almighty Z isn't around but her skills are still there. Even though she's handsome, she's really sinister, too sinister. The pop-up messages lit up the screen in an instant. Someone even sent her a plane. Shui Yaoyao sat there, watching the word victory appear on the screen. Only then did she feel that she had won, her palms sweating as she held on to the mouse. The team members behind her had already rushed over. Lin Feng pressed his hand on her head. Yaoyao, you've become sinister, you're drawing aggro like little blackhead. But it's fine, our team is the most sinister team, ha 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 ha. The audience in front of the computer. They had never seen someone insult their own team so much, their hearts aching for Almighty Yun. Coco's way of expressing his joy was the most direct, reaching out to carry Shui Yaoyao, almost kissing her as though she was his rabbit. Fortunately, Feng Shang grabbed his hand. What are you doing? Yaoyao is a girl. I forgot in excitement, why are you so nervous? Coco paused, realizing that the person in his arms was a little soft. He let go, smiling cutely. Yaoyao, we won. Yes, he had won. He could finally represent Huaxia. This time, they finally persevered to the end. Shui Yaoyao was also very happy, her face red. Was it because she was too young that there was no difference between a man and a woman at this moment? Everyone wanted to give Shui Yaoyao a hug. What exactly was he insisting on? It was probably because he didn't want to let go of any opportunity. Even if there were rumors everywhere, he still wanted to move forward towards what he wanted. Everyone was cheering. On CK's side, his face had turned green. It was obvious that he wasn't satisfied with this match, but a match was a match. In a solo, it was always about the first drop of blood. However, CK was not a petty opponent. He only left a message on the screen, see you at the Asian Cup. The commentator was still explaining the review of the match when the people on the other side had already gone offline. A portion of the fans had also turned off their computers. Even though many people thought that Shui Yaoyao's victory was just a fluke. But that didn't affect Supreme Alliance's celebration. Feng Yi walked over, raising his hand to check the time on his watch. I still have a meeting, think about what to eat tonight, let's have a good celebration. They had obtained the qualification for the Asian Cup, but they weren't sure if that person would be back. And Little Spade, Feng Yi was a secretive person, he wouldn't reveal things easily. Chapter 1173. There was one good thing. Supreme Alliance didn't disperse. That meant there was a chance. Feng Yi pushed the glasses on his face, looking very shrewd at this moment. Shui Yaoyao took the opportunity to walk over. Her first thought was to tell His Highness Jiu about her victory. Call back? Feng Yi paused, then shook his head. I can't. Shui Yaoyao stilled, not saying a word. Feng Yi glanced at her, turning to light a cigarette. After taking 2 puffs, he said, this time, Little Spade contacted me. Yaoyao, it is highly possible that Little Spade won't be coming back for the competition. Even though it might affect your morale, it isn't a bad thing for you to know about it. Prepare for the Asian Cup seriously and don't think too much about it. Shui Yaoyao thought about it. I still have to wait for her to come back. Feng Yi's smoking hand paused and he smiled slowly. All right. It was just a word, it didn't matter if it was expectation. Regardless of when it was. When they turned back to look at the empty seat in the middle, there would always be a feeling of emptiness in their hearts. At that moment, they would always think about what it would be like when the two of them were there. The clicking sound of the mouse was heard in the club for a long time. But there was no longer the youngster who liked to turn over and help you adjust the computer settings. Shui Yaoyao glanced up. She believed that it wasn't just her, everyone was waiting for the two of them, including their boss Feng. After the competition, Shui Yaoyao had to pack up. Since it was a live broadcast, she had to do a small platform Q&A session. There was a car parked outside the club. It was a top-notch car on the list, especially the color, dark purple. The smooth lines made it look expensive. That car often appeared in some reports, and most of the time, it was always related to some female celebrity. Which meant that there wasn't a single person in Jiang City who didn't know this car. The Jiang family. The driver sat in the front, seemingly waiting for someone. He tilted his head to take a look, muttering to himself, why isn't young master out yet? In fact, young master rarely watched such competitions. Moreover, it wasn't a large-scale competition, it was a live broadcast. Even the arena was very small. The driver didn't understand why young master would go there. Could it be because of Miss? Thinking of this, a smile appeared on the driver's face. It would be great if it was because of the young mistress. The new madam had always been worried that the young master would dislike them, and the atmosphere in the house was never good. Indeed, young master used to dislike young miss no matter how he looked at her. But things were different now. The driver rolled down the window a little more. Inside the club building, the atmosphere at the scene was very lively. After all, Shui Yaoyao had won the match, so this was considered her home ground. However, there was one person sitting there. His entire body seemed to be frozen. There was no expression on his face. His eyes swept over the screen once again. It's playing back. Apart from the match just now, the replay also showed the scene of Shui Yaoyao being hugged and kissed after the match. In the video, the two of them were wearing the same uniform, pure black with the Supreme Alliance logo. They looked at each other and smiled. There was a lot of other content. How many times had she seen Coco beside her? The young master of the Wendy group was said to be an illegitimate child. None of the people Qin Mo had poached seemed simple. But that was not the main point. Chapter 1174. Jiang Zhuo clearly remembered that he had followed his father's instructions to bring her home for the festival. After all, it was the Mid-Autumn Festival. There was no reason not to have a reunion at home. He took time off to sleep and even moved the meeting to the next morning. But she told him that she had something to do that day and was busy. Jiang Zhuo didn't mind since he was only completing his mission alone. When he returned home, the atmosphere wasn't right. Perhaps those people thought that he wasn't willing to fetch her. But the festival went on as usual. But there was more food on the table that she liked to eat. Jiang Zhua thought about it and took the food. He wanted to send it to her place. He would occasionally see news about this and knew that she was practicing to qualify for the Asian Cup. But who would have thought that before he drove into her neighborhood, he would see her sitting on a bench by the roadside, looking up at the sky, deep in thought. She looked a little lost. Just as he was about to get out of the car, he saw someone walk past her hand. The two seemed to have made an appointment. The person smiled and iced her with his hand. Then he handed her an ice cream cone. It looked like they were on a date. She sat in the same position, even her face was flushed. He could hear her laughter. "Coco, thank you. If it wasn't for you, I would have spent the festival alone pitifully." When she said this, Coco even reached out to stroke the stray hair beside her ear, saying something like, "As long as you're happy." Then the two of them sat together and went to play with a passing cat. They smiled and knew each other very well. At that moment, Jiang Zhua's grip on the steering wheel tightened bit by bit before gradually releasing it. In the end, he didn't get out of the car or say a word. Instead, he took the opportunity when the red and green traffic lights changed to turn the car in another direction. That day, even he himself didn't know why, but he was very irritated. What did he mean by spending the festival alone pitifully? She was the one who didn't want to go home. The more Jiang Zhua wanted to control himself, the more he recalled the past. That soft fatty would always appear in front of him. He was so irritable that he wanted to argue with his father. And when he was unhappy on the anniversary of his mother's death, she was always there, sitting beside him and listening to him talk about those things. She didn't argue or make a fuss. Every time she saw him, she would be. That was why he had never exposed the fact that she liked him. He had seen that kind of gaze too many times. Of course, he knew what the other party was thinking. He did not intend to respond. Firstly, it was because he had never thought of dating while he was in school. Secondly, all his energy was focused on fighting against his father. He didn't refuse the man's care and the breakfast that was brought over. Jiang Zhua was well aware that everyone had their eyes on his face. But at that time, it was a very ordinary thing. Now that he thought about it, it always made him uncomfortable. At first, it was because her mother walked into their house. Even now, he couldn't tell what was wrong with him. Just by sitting there and looking at the screen, he felt that it was blinding, especially after she was picked up and smiled. In the end, he could no longer sit still. He must be crazy. He didn't even rest and came to watch a live solo. He was probably afraid that Qin Mo's team would lose. But his footsteps seemed to be fixed in place. Chapter 1175. Even though he stood up, many people around him had already shifted their gazes over, including some reporters. Only her attention was on Coco's face. In the past, she had mentioned that she liked younger brothers. Was this the type? Jiang Zhua scoffed, his voice cold. He picked up his phone and walked to the passageway without turning back. But for some reason, he was still frustrated. He didn't want to go home with such emotions, in case there was a group of people guarding against him. To be fair, he had always felt that his father had betrayed his mother. That promise of never marrying into the family was already enough. Jiang Zhua knew that it wasn't appropriate for Mama Shui to take the blame. Over the years, his father had been involved in many affairs outside. But he had never brought them home. Mama Shui was the first. She even married into a prestigious family. Jiang Zhua didn't know how to describe his feelings. Betrayal was his first reaction. As for the rest, this marriage wasn't balanced to begin with. That person had long known that his mother would marry into the family but hadn't said a word to him. Was it because all the fawning she had done in the past so that she could marry into the family and become his younger sister earlier? After all, the Jiang family was rich. That was indeed his initial thought. But after spending so much time together and seeing the atmosphere in the family, he gradually understood that Mama Shui wasn't that kind of person. It wasn't that she didn't take anything, but she wasn't greedy. When his father was drunk, she would cook noodles in the kitchen and never buy anything from his father, probably because she was worried that he would be angry. Once she married into the family, she signed an agreement that her youngest son wouldn't have a share of the assets. Actually, Jiang Zhuo didn't care about the assets, it was obvious. He had long left the Jiang family's sphere of influence, and even his personal assets were larger than the Jiang family's. But she seemed to be worried that he would do this. She had even specially told him that her brother was still young and had never thought about this aspect, asking him not to send her brother overseas. This person never seemed to understand the situation. There were some words that should be said to his father, not to him. Going overseas to further his studies, and he didn't like it? Sometimes, Jiang Zhuo really didn't know what she was thinking. Forget it, it didn't matter. Just as Jiang Zhuo was about to leave, he saw Shui Yaoyao. Shui Yaoyao saw him too. She had just come out from the interview, the heat still burning on her face. She was indeed happy after winning the competition. But Shui Yaoyao hadn't expected to see him here. The Jiang family shouldn't have invested in esports. Was he waiting for her? Shui Yaoyao paused and was about to walk. A chuckle came from the other side. Young Master Jiang. It was a female broadcaster. Recently, she had been very popular on the internet. She was different from the others. Whether it was her looks or her style, she was very fairy-like. She was a beauty blogger. She was beautiful even when she was simple and elegant. That was probably why she attracted so many fans. Shui Yaoyao seemed to have understood something. She felt that if she went over now, she would probably disturb him, so she decided to wait here. The female streamer walked past her. She even had a nice fragrance. It wasn't very strong, but it was faint. It seemed to be his taste. Jiang. Chapter 1176. It should be a blessing to be liked by such a girl. And the two of them looked like a good match. Actually, after Shui Yaoyao had calmed down, she felt that he seemed to be very casual when it came to finding girlfriends. Or perhaps he had never acknowledged who was the real deal and had never put in any feelings, which was why he had always been like this. That was probably the reason. The girl today was worthy of being called a fairy. Shui Yaoyao thought that perhaps he would end his promise with her earlier. After all, that promise wasn't about self-respect no matter how she looked at it. Even if there was a girl he liked, he probably wouldn't want to mention it again. Shui Yaoyao looked up and landed her gaze on that face. That person was still so handsome that even the starry sky outside seemed to lose its color. He was different from the Almighty. Although they grew up together, their personalities were different. This person always gave people a cold feeling, even when he smiled, he looked like a playboy. But looking at his side profile, there was something else. Because he probably didn't notice her. He turned his head, his long fingers flicking the cigarette ash, his voice carrying a smile. What's up? The female streamer was direct. I always wanted to find a chance to treat you to a meal, to thank young Master Jiang for helping me out last time. No need. It was two simple words, but his voice floated towards her. Shui Yaoyao felt that it wasn't a good place for her to stand, the middle of the corridor was too obvious. Most importantly, in her current position, she could neither retreat nor advance. He probably noticed someone else's presence. The female streamer looked in her direction, her lips curved into a smile, her face as white as water. It's an esports player from our company, he just won a match, he's amazing. Young Master Jiang, do you know him? Shui Yaoyao didn't expect that she would become the topic of conversation. At this point, she could only walk over. Wearing her uniform, she was much braver than before. Brother. Yes, when Shui Yaoyao called out that word, she didn't have any barriers anymore. But Shui Yaoyao wasn't sure if he was willing to acknowledge her as his sister. As expected, when she called out, his handsome face was expressionless. His handsome face was expressionless as he turned to look at her. His eyes were so deep that it made her heart palpitate. Brother? The female streamer's beautiful eyes widened as if she had found out a secret. Even her expression became animated. Yao Yao, are you young Master Zhang's sister? Shui Yao Yao smiled, thinking that it was best not to answer. On the other hand, a bone-chilling voice came from the other side. Not a blood relative. Oh. The female streamer smiled. She had never heard of the Zhang family having a daughter. Shui Yao Yao was used to his denial. He didn't feel anything. She felt like she was unnecessary by just standing there. Coupled with the playful expression on the female host's face. Shui Yao Yao blushed. Luckily, there was no one around. He wanted to leave but couldn't find a suitable excuse or opportunity. It was a very delicate situation. Shui Yao Yao thought that if they continued talking, she would take the chance to slip away. If she wanted to get out, she had to go in that direction. If she went in this direction, she would be retreating. Chapter 1177. Right at this moment, a figure appeared in front of them. A silhouette appeared in front of her. Before his face could be seen, his voice was heard. Yao Yao, how long do you want us to wait for you? Come quickly. It was Coco in his battle uniform. Probably because it was winter, he was afraid of the cold and had a scarf around his neck, making his face even more beautiful. Originally, Coco had only wanted to greet her, but after seeing so many people, he paused and walked over. He arched a brow, as though asking, what's going on? Shui Yao Yao reacted quickly, as though she had found her savior. She held on to the cat-like youngster's arm. Did you wait too long? In fact, they interacted like this in the team, as close as siblings. Nonsense, I'm starving. If you don't believe me, listen to my stomach. When Coco pouted, he didn't look annoying, instead, he looked cute. But I told them to wait for you, everyone is outside now. Shui Yao Yao turned to Zhang Zhua. Then we'll leave first. With that, she paused. Have fun. The last 5 words were directed at the female caster. She smiled elegantly, the beauty of a Jiangnan girl, full of immortality. Okay, bye. On the other hand, Zhang Zhuo was expressionless and cold, as though he hadn't heard her. Regardless, it was good that she left. This was Shui Yao Yao's first breath of relief after leaving. Coco frowned. Why do you look as though you were a third wheel? Are they dating? Shu, lower your voice. Shui Yao Yao replied. I'm not sure. But there weren't many people who could make that person wait for them. Coco shook his head. The company signed a contract, new female casters aren't allowed to date for half a year. They aren't even allowed to date? Shui Yao Yao arched a brow. That's a little overbearing. Coco was smart now. Fox Fong set the contract, if he hears you, you don't have to eat. Yao Yao, Coco pressed the elevator button as he said, moreover, these beauty bloggers are all signed by internet celebrities, while some are recruited by their managers from schools. There are all kinds of them, but the only thing they have in common is their good looks. After all, they aren't game streamers, and the fans like them because they are single. This kind of contract exists in every company that promotes internet celebrities, and it's based on market demand. Unless it's a very unique type of internet celebrity, like my goddess, every video she releases becomes a classic. These kinds of people who rely on their looks to get into a relationship, I haven't even dated one yet. This, the last sentence should be the main point. Shui Yao Yao could hear the perfect resentment in his voice. She smiled and said, you can find one. That won't do. If I find one, what about my wives who watch me play games? They'll cry, Coco said as if it was true. Hearing this, Shui Yao Yao's heart sank. So those people still can't accept that Her Highness Zhou is a girl because of this? destroying their yearning for their male idol. Chapter 1178. Yes. The problem now was that Highness Joe didn't seem to have any intention of returning. It was said that he had gone overseas to film a movie. But ever since the video was released, Shui Yaoyao didn't know why, but she had a feeling that she would never be able to see that figure in the esports arena again. Because it was obvious that when the video was released, there was a sense of farewell. Moreover, Highness Joe couldn't be contacted at all. Shui Yaoyao's gaze followed the elevator lights. She didn't notice anything else. Jiang Zhua, who was still standing in the long corridor, gripped his phone tightly. There wasn't a single reply to the message he sent. The female caster was still standing beside him, her smile still on her face. Young Master Jiang, do you want to walk around my workplace? He had helped her previously at the table and seemed to be very interested in their club. This time, she had the chance to be alone. The female caster had to admit that she had long been moved. She knew that he liked her type, so naturally, she had to grab the opportunity. But she hadn't expected that he wouldn't give her any face at all. He only said one word, no. Then, he walked toward the elevator. It wasn't a good time for her to strike up a conversation, there were other casters coming over. Rather than letting everyone notice him, it was better for her to take a step back. Some of them liked to snatch investors, so she had to guard against them. Shui Yaoyao's perception was actually wrong. Even if the other party was full of immortal air, he was still immortal. Everyone would think the same when they met someone they liked. There wasn't much difference. After Jiang Zhua entered the elevator, the smile on his face disappeared completely. It was as though there was a heavy object pressing down on his chest. It was only when he walked out of the elevator that the heavy object on his chest seemed to be removed. But there was still no response from his phone. The message he sent was like a stone sinking into the ocean. Did that person not see it, or did he want to be with someone else, so he didn't even reply? 1 minute, 2 minutes, 3 minutes. Jiang Zhua stood there, his phone still silent. He walked to the main entrance. After all, he had sent her a message to wait for him there. But obviously, she wasn't there. There were many fans walking back and forth, and the surrounding people were all discussing the competition. I think it was a fluke. I don't think so. Think about it carefully. Shui Yaoyao's teleportation, her ability to predict CK's position, and the timing of the Tyrant King are all very accurate. This isn't something anyone can do. I have a feeling that Shui Yaoyao might have predicted CK's character this time. In this game, there are many supports, but there are only 2 that can counter them. Although Shui Yaoyao's support has been weakened this season, it can still counter the support. I don't understand what you're talking about, but it's good that you won. In the past, I always felt that she was just a decoration in Supreme Alliance. 23333, you should have heard Almighty Z's call. Everyone has their own role in the team. Don't underestimate even the smallest support. I realized why you're always insulting me today. Because I play support too. To be honest, I'm a fan of Shui Yaoyao. She has finally found her place in Supreme Alliance. Don't you think that after seeing her, you want to work harder? He seemed to be incompatible with her, and even his bones were permeated with a noble aura. He sat in the back seat with his usual casual posture, just like when he appeared in front of her again after he learned that her mother would marry into the Jiang family. He also sat like this, giving off a feeling of superiority. However, he had the capital to be high and mighty. The driver was still Uncle Wang. Uncle Wang also noticed her. Shui Yaoyao was walking away. Chapter 1180. He looked as though he didn't like seeing her at such a time. Shui Yaoyao guessed that he was probably unhappy that she had interrupted his date and mentioned that she was his sister. After all, he had never been willing to admit it. Shui Yao Yao didn't make things difficult for Uncle Wang, nodding towards him as a greeting. Her retreating made Jiang Zui even more frustrated. Fortunately, he could still control himself. Even if he really wanted to ask her how he, Jiang Zui, was lacking compared to a boy. Did she know how cold it was outside and how long he had waited for her? As the car moved, the questions disappeared. Coco noticed Yao Yao's gaze following the car and glanced over, his gaze clean. What are you looking at? Young Master Zhang's car. I wanted to greet him. Shui Yao Yao turned over. We seem to have interrupted his date just now. He doesn't look too good, he must be unhappy. Coco scoffed, the arrogance of a cat. Then let him be unhappy. Did he forget that you are his sister? Shui Yao Yao waved her hands. It doesn't count if I'm not his biological sister. Even if I'm not his biological sister, I should give in. Coco pulled his rabbit over. You are our sister Yao. Shui Yao Yao glanced at him, replying slowly, I remember I'm a month older than you, young man. F***ck, why do you have to be so clear? This song is really nice, I'll use it for the background music in the next live stream. Coco cleverly changed the topic. Shui Yao Yao didn't continue, turning to ask, didn't you say you were waiting for me? Where are the others? Fox Fong is probably held up, Uncle Ian and the rest are in the car, the only ones who aren't in are Lin Fong and Yun Yun. Uncle told us to wait for them here. Coco paused and said meaningfully, I have a feeling that the two of them want to talk about something alone. Otherwise, why aren't they out yet? Shui Yao Yao choked, but even she could sense that the relationship between Almighty Lin and Almighty Yun was different from before. Was it true that they were a couple? She could only ask this question with her eyes. Coco bit the rabbit ear in his arms and muttered, how scary, I'm the only straight guy left in the team, this will cause misunderstandings. Shui Yao Yao. To be honest, you're the one who looks the most like a gay in the team. However, it did take quite a long time. Shui Yao Yao took out her phone to check the time. Unexpectedly, when she turned on the screen, she saw 2 WeChat messages in silent mode. They were all sent to her by young Master Jiang. The first was position. The second message was 3 words, come here. The message was sent 20 minutes ago. 20 minutes. At that time, she seemed to have just gotten off the elevator. Shui Yao Yao looked up at the main entrance on the west side. She thought about the car that had just driven past her. No wonder he looked a little angry. It was probably because she didn't go to the designated place according to his instructions and made him wait for a few minutes on the 10th. She knew Jiang Zui. Except for the person he wanted to wait for, he was willing to pay the time. If he didn't want to wait, he probably felt that it wasn't worth it. She had probably wasted his time just now. But Shui Yao Yao couldn't figure out why he was looking for her. Was it because he called her brother just now? It was highly possible. Shui Yao Yao looked at the WeChat page. She wanted to reply, but since he had already left and she was angry, there was no point in replying. Chapter 1181. The car was silent. The chauffeur could sense that his young master wasn't in a good mood. He had intended to return to the Jiang family, but his young master had changed his mind and wanted to return to his own place. After Jiang Zui returned to his room, he didn't turn on the lights. Instead, he walked to the sofa in the living room and sat down, the back of his head resting on the sofa as he stared at the ceiling. He had never done such a thing before. However, he didn't know why today was different from usual. The surroundings were too quiet. It was so quiet that he didn't know what he was doing. Even his eyes were a little empty. When he closed his eyes and opened them again, he seemed to have thought of something. He suddenly stood up and kicked the trash can to vent his anger. After a loud bang, everything returned to silence. He sat there, his brows furrowed. The esports ticket that had been placed beside his hand was such an eyesore. It was so eyesore that every time he saw it, he would think of certain scenes. It was really uncomfortable. He crumpled the ticket with his fingers. This series of actions caused a loud noise. It was clear that Jiang Zuo was really unhappy. Ever since he had started the company, he rarely lost his temper like this. But when he was in school, he had been stubborn. Whenever he had a problem with his father, he would kick things to vent his anger. At that time, she was the only one who knew how he had vented his anger. Now, Jiang Zuo lifted his head to look at the ceiling, his eyes even more empty than before. No one knew what he was thinking. He was completely silent, the silence as though he wasn't in the room. The crowd outside the entertainment department was almost gone. Coco and Shui Yaoyao were in their uniforms, leaning against the wall as they waited. "I'll send them a message." In the end, Coco couldn't take it anymore, his fingers typing on his phone. At this moment, Yunhu was held up by the media, mainly because his return was a hot topic. The platform would definitely interview as many people as they could. Lin Feng sat in the lounge waiting. He felt that it was taking too long, so he opened a game on his phone. Because there was only a glass door, the soundproofing wasn't very good. He could still vaguely hear the interview question. "Why did you decide to come back?" "I heard that once Almighty Yun missed his school abroad, it would be hard to get in again. They've reserved a spot for 3 months. If I don't come back to be with my Supreme Alliance teammates, I'll probably have regrets for the rest of my life." Yunhu paused. "Compared to my studies, there's someone more important to me here." Damn. This was Lin Feng's first reaction. After all, every time Yunhu said that, the reporters would definitely link them together. As expected, the interviewer's voice rose. "Could the most important person be our Lord Lin Feng?" Lin Feng reached out and rubbed his ears. There was really no creativity in the interview at all. Yunhu was very cooperative. "MMH," he replied. "Everyone in the team is important. Almighty Yun is being bureaucratic again. Alright, I won't waste any more of Almighty Yun's time. Master Lin Feng should have been waiting there for a long time." When Lin Feng heard this, he thought to himself, "You've finally found a topic to write a couple about, right?" Indeed, the topic of the CP would definitely be read more than the news of Almighty Yun returning to China alone. The interview was over. Chapter 1182. His broad shoulders made the simple black uniform look straight and stylish. It was no wonder so many people wanted to interview him. Lin Feng stuffed his phone into his pocket and was about to stand up. The person who was walking over suddenly bent down and landed in front of him. He placed his left hand on the chair he was sitting on and said slowly, "Why, are you in a hurry?" In an instant, Lin Feng seemed to be enveloped by him. The man's beautiful chin appeared in front of him, accentuating the black uniform. He felt that the distance was a little too close. He adjusted himself instinctively and wanted to stand up. "Nonsense, of course I'm in a hurry. Coco and the rest have been waiting outside for a long time. They even sent me a message. Let's go, let's go." With that, Lin Feng took a step forward. "Wait a minute." Yunhu spoke again, his tone calm. "Ever since I came back, you didn't seem to express anything." "Express anything? Bring him out for a meal or a night at the internet cafe?" This was just the beginning. Lin Feng was still standing there thinking. Yunhu had already stretched his hand out. Lin Feng didn't know what he wanted to do or if he was crazy. He leaned forward and fiddled with Yunhu's arm. In that instant, the aura from his body intensified. Lin Feng said, "F***CK, what exactly do you want to do?" There was a hint of laughter in his tone. Basically, when guys got along, they would have a catchphrase. "Why?" "I'm scared." Yunhu was still adjusting. His beautiful brows arched slightly as he moved both of Lin Feng's arms into a perfect arc. Lin Feng smirked. "I'm scared. Let me tell you, I have fans too." "That's right, you have many fans, Almighty Lin Feng." When Yunhu said this, his tone was calm and obviously playful. A word rolled out of Lin Feng's throat. He chuckled and scolded, "Scram. After a trip abroad, did he not even know how to speak properly? And what was he trying to do?" Lin Feng lowered his lids and looked at his posture. He didn't know that his breath was already on Yunhu's neck. He still felt uncomfortable and wanted to move. This was a little too close. But he pressed down on his wrist. Then Yunhu bent down and crawled in from the bottom up. His entire body appeared in the arc formed by his arms. Lin Feng's head was still lowered, and the other party's actions caught him off guard. Even his thin lips touched the other party's ear. The cool sensation was soft, and scary. Holy sh*t, what kind of position is this? Also, did he kiss Yunhu's ear just now? Lin Feng's eyes widened. His first reaction was to turn his face away. Otherwise, who knew where his lips would touch? Really, your sister? Lin Feng's heart clearly couldn't calm down. His lips still lingered on that unusual feeling. Although it was cold, her lips felt a little hot. She didn't know why. Lin Feng clenched his fists tightly. Even his fingertips felt intense. F***ck me. Calm down, it's just a touch, a light brush, it shouldn't be a big deal. Lin Feng coughed lightly. Chapter 1183. In an instant. Lin Feng's face turned red. F***ck, did your language teacher teach you? Do you know how to use adjectives? I just touched you, that's a touch, bro. Lin Feng had never felt so awkward before. Oh, Yunhu replied nonchalantly. Then he laughed. His laughter seemed to travel from his ears to his heart. The two of them were really too close. This kind of posture. Lin Feng wanted to explode again. He inhaled deeply. Also, what are you doing? It would be weird if I didn't touch your ear while hugging you. That's right, Yunhu had made a circle with his hands before going in. They were so close that Lin Feng was hugging him. Because they were so close, Lin Feng could even feel the rise and fall of his chest when his heart beat. He wanted to let go, his scalp tingling. It was all because the man's hormones were too strong. Yunhu wouldn't give him the chance. He hugged him like a good brother. Then he lowered his head and whispered into his ear, "Why? Didn't you cry when I went overseas? Now that I'm back, I'm hugging you to comfort you." Lin Feng couldn't find fault with Yunhu. After all, the hug didn't have any meaning. Lin Feng pushed him away. "Comfort my A**s, I don't need it. If you mention the airport again, I'll blacklist you. Did you hear me? Didn't I say that I have fans too? I'll get my army of fans to destroy you. You're amazing." Yunhu was still laughing after being pushed away. It was a natural interaction. But as for why Yunhu took the opportunity to do something, only he knew. After leaving the country, Yunhu's thoughts changed. In the past, he was afraid to express his thoughts because he would hate him so much that he wouldn't even want to meet him. Now, Yunhu only had one thought, to turn him gay. So what if he was straight? He didn't think about it, but it didn't mean that others didn't. Yunhu gradually understood that it was one thing to convince him in his heart, but it was another thing to watch him walk closer to someone else and be unable to control himself. Since Supreme Alliance could be reformed, nothing was impossible between the two of them. Even if it was impossible, he would make everything possible. Lin Feng didn't know what Yunhu was thinking about. He just felt an indescribable heat from the small space they were in. Damn it, was today's weather forecast a lie? Didn't he tell them that the weather would turn cold after autumn? He even reminded them to wear more clothes. Why is it so hot? Lin Feng turned his head away. After putting some distance between them, he felt much better. Go down. Yunhu's voice came from behind him. Lin Feng replied with an N. Both of them were wearing black uniforms with silver logos. No matter how one looked at them, they looked cool and dashing. There were still fans waiting outside. Indeed, the reason there were so many fans at the venue was because Yunhu was back. They wanted to take a look, which was why they hadn't left yet. Lin Feng hadn't expected there to be so many people there, and they were all Yunhu's fans. He arched a brow. When the fans saw that the two of them came out together, they cheered even more. Chapter 1184. This girl was special. Perhaps others treated Yunhu like a fan towards their idol. But this girl was different. During Yunhu's live stream, she had smashed many planes. That wasn't all, she had given other fans many red packets just to be the representative to send flowers. The atmosphere was just right. Sometimes, the hearts of fans were really strange. They felt that no one was worthy of their idol, but when they received something substantial, they would gradually change and lean towards the person who gave them benefits. After all, idols were untouchable and the girl was by their side. Most importantly, she was beautiful and rich. Hence, no matter what she did, they wouldn't think it was too much. They even felt that her way of chasing someone was a little flirtatious. Some fans only hoped that Almighty Yun would accept this bouquet of flowers. Even the naive Lin Feng felt that the atmosphere wasn't like the usual atmosphere of a fan meeting. Moreover, Yunhu could see through the entire situation with one glance. The girl was also in the online circle, but she wasn't an esports player. Perhaps, she really liked him, but he had rejected her a long time ago. But there were some people who wouldn't take the rejection seriously. Instead, they would lie and say that they were close. The more ambiguous and fake her words, the more Yunhu felt conflicted. During that period of time, he had been busy overseas and hadn't asked Orange Horse to ban her since it wasn't a big deal. Now, it seemed like he had underestimated some people's thoughts. Yunhu arched a brow, glancing at the bouquet near him. He stuffed a hand into his pocket and laughed. Don't you know that people with boyfriends can't accept flowers from others? People with boyfriends? In that instant, all the fans froze. There were still the reporters who hadn't left. Lin Feng's first reaction was, F***ck, did Yunhu go crazy when he was in love? What was the tolerance in China? What was he trying to do? It wouldn't be good for his boyfriend if he made it public. Lin Feng could almost imagine the explosion on the official website that night. Fox Feng wouldn't be able to sleep well. Supreme Alliance had been going against the trend recently. They should get someone to take a look at their feng shui. But that was how the esports industry was. Love could sometimes turn into harm. Lin Feng had many thoughts, one after another surfacing in his mind. But the next second, there was a bouquet in his arms. What was going on? Lin Feng was a little stunned. He wanted to curse, but then he felt that there were too many people. Holding the flowers with one hand, he felt that he was a little stupid. Damn you, why did you give me my flower? Did he look like a follower? Yunhu replied slowly, isn't it natural for a fan to send flowers to her boyfriend? What the F***ck, what the F***ck? Lin Feng was also hit. His face was hot. Who's your boyfriend? Yunhu arched a brow. The online group counts. Why? I've only left the country once and you don't want me as your CP anymore. Haven't you heard of King of Storms Road? You. At this time, Lin Feng also understood that the other party was joking. Using this method to avoid direct confrontation with the fans was not a bad idea. But, F***ck, why was his heart beating so fast just now? Chapter 1185. It's nothing, it's indeed King Feng Yun. I'll accept the flowers from the one below, Lin Feng said, reaching out and placing his arm over Yunhu's shoulder. Both of them broke into smiles, unbridled, allowing the reporters to take photos. The more they acted like this, the less people would think there was anything going on between them. Being a couple wasn't a big deal in the esports industry, it was often used as a joke. Only the girl felt a little uncomfortable in her heart, but she didn't show it on her face. She looked at the two of them and lowered her head to send a message to a few other fans she was close with. They can't really be together, right? Impossible, it's a joke. Even if they are together, it doesn't matter, I'm a fan of this couple. The girl raised her hand. It's nothing, I just feel a little disappointed. That's true, Almighty Yun actually gave your flowers to someone else after receiving them. I feel like the two of you are too detached. Almighty Yun hasn't shown any response from the beginning. To be honest, I feel a little awkward watching you send flowers. How can you say that, isn't it because we like him? That's right. After listening to their conversation, the fourth girl didn't speak. Actually, she was a little confused. Back then, when she joined the chat group, it was because she wanted Almighty Yun to be better. Why did things change in the end? Unknowingly, someone had changed. She had been standing close to Almighty Yun and judging from his expression, he didn't like the flowers, which was why she realized she had gone overboard. She had been clamoring for Almighty Yun to accept her as a friend since they were all fans and would join in the commotion. But thinking about it, what was the difference between this and forcing someone to marry Almighty Yun? If Almighty Yun wanted to date, he could do it himself. They were causing a commotion in a public place. Fortunately, Almighty Lin was there, it was a good way to divert attention. If not, Almighty Yun accepting the flowers would be on the news the next day. Now, they were at the crucial moment of the Asian Cup. They were still thinking about private matters. Was this really okay? Who was the one who said from the start that if one liked an idol, one had to be closer to his work and stay away from his private life? Why did they forget why they liked him in the first place? Now, she actually wanted him to live according to her own imagination. That person thought about it for a moment and finally decided to leave the group. It wasn't because of anything else, but because she didn't want to become a person that even she didn't recognize in the end. On the other side, Lin Feng's hand was placed on Yunhu's shoulder. He was very adept at dealing with the media. However, the warmth on his face couldn't be deceived. Yunhu created trouble for him the moment he came back. That was enough. Only when they entered the elevator did Lin Feng retract his hand. He coughed and looked at the flower in his left hand. He wanted to return it to its owner. Unexpectedly, Yunhu didn't accept it. Why would a man like me need flowers? Besides, didn't I give it to you just now, boyfriend? Yunhu said the last three words very slowly, almost with pauses between each word. Lin Feng wanted to curse again, but in the end, he could only spit out, F***ck, are you addicted to playing? Yunhu watched as the elevator slid down to the first floor. He walked out first and glanced at the flower in Lin Feng's arms. It suits you. Lin Feng wanted to say that it didn't suit him. It wasn't a big deal for a man like him to hold a flower, but it was a big deal for a man like him to hold it. However, he couldn't throw the flower away. If he did, who knew what the media would write? He carried it on his shoulder, a cigarette dangling from his mouth. He was very mischievous. Honestly, if it wasn't for Lin Feng's beautiful face and straightforward behavior, he would have been a pure man who grew up in the alleys of Jiang City. The two of them were dressed in their uniforms and one of them was carrying a bouquet of flowers. It was definitely eye-catching. Shui Yaoyao raised her head and saw the two young masters. She seemed to reach out and wave at them. Then, she shifted her gaze to the bouquet Lin Feng was carrying, her eyes full of interest. Coco was listening to the song and was shocked by this scene. He asked instinctively, "You guys are progressing so fast." What did they mean by progressing? Lin Feng blushed. F***ck, stop making wild guesses. This is a gift from a fan. Oh. Coco bit the rabbit's ear in his arms. I've never received flowers from a fan before. Almighty Lin Feng, can you explain why Almighty Yun is written on the bouquet? Lin Feng thought, Hey, aren't you excited? He pulled Coco over and started playing with him. Shui Yao Yao thought he was shy. Yunhu's gaze was gentle. He turned over. Where's Boss Feng? He's probably still busy. Fox Feng asked us to bring you to the car first. We've already booked a place for dinner. You can go all out today. Coco's face was still red when he said this. He was obviously happy. On this day, there was no one who was unhappy. But even so, Feng Yi was still thinking of ways to contact her. However, the location of the call couldn't be found. Actually, it wasn't because Bojio didn't want to pick up the call. Instead, they were discovered the moment they finished their call. Prince was the first to react because the aura of the person standing with his back facing the light was too strong. He howled. He had wanted his brother to escape since they weren't there, and it wasn't easy to punish them. Unexpectedly, before he could move, a gaze swept over him. Other than coldness, he couldn't feel any other aura. In that instant, Prince froze in midair. His limbs were stiff, much less his scalp. Right now, he only had one thought. They didn't seem like cousins. The person in his military uniform walked past him. He didn't seem like someone from the military, instead, he seemed like someone from a higher class. When the aura assaulted him, Prince froze even more. Fortunately, the person didn't stop. He probably knew his true target was in the forest. Prince heaved a sigh of relief. Finally, he heard the man spit out 2 words faintly, "Come here." Bojio moved her sleeves and hid her phone in the sleeves of her uniform. She stuffed a hand into her pocket and walked towards Qin Mo. Prince was still in a daze. Where's the phone he was holding? Magician stood beside him. He wanted to say something but didn't. After all, he was impressed by this brother's courage. He actually dared to be alone with the person his captain liked. He even came to the forest for a secret rendezvous. To be honest, this was a suicidal move. You're awesome, brother. Chapter 1186. Very quickly, his premonition was proven true. The person behind him spoke with a unique indifference and nobility. Hand him over to the old general and let him handle it. Yes. Magician started to lead him away. Prince's eyes widened. F***ck, why did everyone know about his sudden appearance? Stop joking, he had already informed his uncle. Even his uncle wasn't sure which team he was in. What exactly was going on? Magician could tell what Prince was thinking from his expression. Brother, you're still too inexperienced. You're still young and inexperienced. Without the two of them, Qin Mo glanced down at the person in front of him. Qin Mo lowered his lids and looked at the person in front of him. He arched a brow and after a moment, he said, "Hand over the thing in your hand." Bojio wanted to make up for it. What is it? Qin Mo reached out and grabbed her wrist, which was in her pocket. Then he pulled up her sleeves and pushed them up. Under his palms was her smooth skin. It was very warm, which made his gaze deepen. Bojio's face heated up. She wasn't sure if it was because of the coldness from his hand or because of her guilt. Since she knew she wasn't going to run away with the phone, she decided to be honest. I didn't do anything to harm the team and I didn't contact Grandfather Butler. Regardless of who you contacted, you aren't allowed to bring any communication devices here. Qin Mo took the phone out from her sleeves. He smiled but the smile didn't reach his eyes. You guys are really capable. It wasn't a compliment. Bojio felt that she had to push the blame away. Since Prince had the old general's protection, he shouldn't be afraid. It's mainly because of Prince's connections. That was the truth. Oh. Qin Mo replied slowly. Your friend will definitely cry if he hears that. Bojio replied honestly, during a team battle, buying teammates is an appropriate way to ensure one's survival. It's also a strategy. What do you think are the chances of you surviving if you fall into my hands? Chin Mo asked coldly. Bo Jiao coughed. I won't do it a second time. Chin Mo didn't reply. Bo Jiao was about to move. Just then, Chin Mo spoke again. Come over. It's so close, and you still want to go over? Bo Jiao glanced up at the person in front of her and scanned the surroundings. When she realized that no one else knew, she roughly understood the Almighty's intentions. The Almighty definitely wanted her to coax him. Definitely. She knew very well what kind of thoughts those proud little princesses in the novels usually had. Bo Jiao smiled. She opened her arms and hugged his waist. Even though her face was dark, there was an indescribable youthful energy around her. Chin Mo paused. Then he reached out and hugged her. He was probably satisfied. His brows relaxed. The more she looked at him, the cuter he was. Bo Jiao wanted to stretch her claws and take advantage of him since it was a rare opportunity. Who would have thought that before she could even move her hand, that familiar breath landed behind her ear? Unhurriedly, he said, 10 laps with weights. Bo Jiao. Wasn't he acting coquettishly just now? What dream are you having again? Chin Mo pinched the youngster's face. He didn't use much strength. It was more like he was spoiling her, but his words had shattered her fantasy. Chapter 1187. Bo Jiao was confused. It would be great if the Almighty could just be his pretty boy quietly. Why did he have to speak? It wasn't beautiful at all. The moment she thought about it, her face was lifted up by him. He asked casually, do you want a kiss? MMH? Kiss? No. Even though that face looked very noble and abstinent when she looked at it up close, she resisted the charm and turned her face away a little. But she couldn't avoid it. He looked at her for a long time, then his lips suddenly curled up. He lowered his head, and his deep gaze landed on her lips. Then he moved closer. His intention was clear. Bo Jiao's face heated up from his breath. She stayed in that position and placed her lips on the corner of his mouth. It felt soft. He didn't move. He seemed to be allowing her to kiss him, a faint smile on his face. It was obvious that he wanted her to do whatever she wanted. Bo Jiao arched a brow. Just as she was about to move, her waist was lifted. His lips kissed her lightly. It was so lingering that it made her heart tremble. When the numbness spread, her legs turned soft. Fortunately, he was holding on to her waist. The kiss wasn't fierce. It was gentle as though he was tasting something. Bo Jiao's breathing was a mess. After all, the hand that went into her waist couldn't be ignored. When he saw her breathing on his shoulder, he let go and pulled a distance away from her. Bo Jiao thought that was it and was about to open her mouth. The next second, he pushed her against the tree. He tilted his head slightly and kissed her. This time, it was so domineering that she couldn't resist. Bo Jiao felt as though her entire body was on fire. When her skin touched his fingers, the slight chill and numbness made her heart beat wildly. When it surged up from her tailbone, she couldn't bear the heavy burden. She felt the breath on her lips. It was so hot and tempting. Hence, her thoughts were burned away. Her body trembled in his arms. Her heart felt as though there was a cat scratching its claws. It was so ticklish that she could only reach out and grab his arm. He seemed to have sensed her reaction. He gradually stopped. When her breathing stabilized, he leaned over again. He looked at the person in front of him. His thin lips were slightly red. His eyes seemed to be watery. He almost couldn't control himself. Idiot. Bo Jiao was still puzzled. How was she stupid? The Almighty always scolded her for no reason. Whenever he was arrogant, he would be like that. Why are you so good-looking? Just looking at you makes me want to kiss you. His fingers touched her face again. Their breaths were still together. After being kissed again, Bojio felt that the Almighty she had managed to woo was exceptionally sweet. He even knew how to praise her. He stretched out his arms and hugged her with a devilish look on his face. Chin Mo didn't reject her. He unbuttoned his military jacket and pulled her into his arms. His well-defined chin rested on the youngster's head. He had probably given all his patience and gentleness to one person. Even his back view seemed different from usual. It was very quiet because they were in the forest. Bojio could hear the beating of his heart. His heartbeat was as urgent as hers. Gradually, her strength lessened. Neither of them spoke. That was the feeling after falling in love. It was as if the air was filled with the sweetness of lemon. Chapter 1188. But this wasn't the right place to date. In the military, there were many things Chin Mo had to worry about. Their embrace was interrupted by the sound of footsteps coming from afar. Chin Mo dragged her directly to the training ground for weighted running. Her heartbeat hadn't calmed down yet, all sorts of emotions were running through her. She and the Almighty were really in love now, right? That should be it. They were dating without any grudges. Bojio carried her things and ran forward as though she was sleepwalking. This time, she didn't seem to have done anything for the Almighty to accept her. It was a pity she hadn't even used her tricks. But she would probably be able to take advantage of him in the future. Now, she had to confirm their relationship. Once the overseas mission was over and she dealt with those people, she would find a chance to propose to the Almighty. Bojio's thoughts were always far-sighted. She was different from others when she ran with weights. Her steps were steady and she was familiar with conserving her energy. Hence, from afar, she was still a handsome youngster. But for some reason, her eyes kept glancing to the side. Her gaze swept past his perfect chin and landed on his thin lips, a layer of light. This was the kind of person who had kissed her just a moment ago. Bojio blushed, her heart racing. She wanted to kiss him back but she didn't have the chance. Prince was basically done with his scolding. After he was brought back, he received the same punishment. The military intercepted their messages and knew they didn't send any special messages. But such a mistake still had to be punished. In the military, punishment wouldn't be spared just because of their status. As a depressed prince, he couldn't understand why the fellow who was running with weights was so happy after being punished. Since when did this person become so enlightened? Standing not far away, Chin Mo, who was dressed in his military uniform, seemed to be laughing silently. Magician, who was walking over, was startled by the laughter and stopped in his tracks. What was going on? In reality, Chin Mo was restraining himself since he couldn't be too obvious. Perhaps he didn't realize that the corners of his lips had never moved down. Magician felt his scalp go numb. He gulped and asked, "Boss, are you in a good mood?" The devil had never smiled in such a way before. It was a piercing sight. He thought that the boss would just glance at him. Who would have thought that the answer he got would be a smiling N? Magician couldn't stand it anymore. Because of number 10 who was punished to run? Chin Mo glanced over, the smile still in his eyes. "Why are you so concerned about my private life?" Magician immediately stood up, his heel touching the ground. "No, I don't care. Whoever dared to care would die." Chin Mo retracted his gaze and looked at the figure that was still running. He smiled again, like the moon in the night, as though he wasn't a subordinate in front of him. There was really no end to it. Magician stood at the side, feeling that his boss was showing off. That smile really made him want to curse. "Boss, we are still a group of single dogs, please don't be like this." It wasn't easy for him to stop laughing. It was the old general who had something to discuss with boss. Before he left, the boss tossed him a bunch of keys. "After a certain someone finishes her run, ask her to take a shower in my room." You're tuning into the Romantic Tales YouTube channel. Don't forget to subscribe and join us on this journey to catch the most captivating stories.